movement in the 60s. Also, I will briefly talk about Black Jews in general, here and abroad. Then finally, I'll use a midrash that will hopefully leave you with a positive message. But first, I'll start by telling you that I had 3 brothers and 4 sisters. There were 8 of us children altogether, of which I am the oldest. My father was a rabbi, and my mother kept a Jewish household. We kept kosher, observed Shabbat. My mother and sisters lit candles on Friday night to usher in the Shabbat. We practiced Judaism by keeping all the major holidays. I began to realize at an early age that our family was different from all the other families in our neighborhood. Our worship day was on Saturday, and everyone else worshiped on Sunday. The other families observed Christmas and Easter, while we had Hanukkah and Passover. When you think about it, it doesn't matter what color you are. Being Jewish just makes you different. On the south side of Chicago, there were about 20 to 25 Black Jewish families who would all come together for the high holy days. The services were led by Rabbi Reuben of the Congregation of Ethiopian Hebrews and was co-officiated by my father. Rabbi Reuben was considered the senior rabbi in the Black Jewish community. Unfortunately, however, there were no formal Hebrew school for the children of the small group of Black Jewish families to attend. That is until my father, who had a strong desire for his children to have a complete Jewish education, decided to do the unthinkable. He went to an all-white Jewish conservative congregation and asked for his children to be given a Jewish education at their school. The rabbis at the congregation, which was Congregation Old Zedek, thought that my dad had wanted to convert to Judaism. But my father had told them that he was as much a Jew as they were, and that the only difference was he was a Black Jew instead of a white Jew. So, Rabbi Simon got together with his assistant, Rabbi Daskell, and put together a panel of about 10 Jewish conservative rabbis from throughout the Chicago area. Then they asked my father if he'd mind coming before a panel to answer some questions. He agreed, and what happened next is nothing short of being a story that would qualify for inclusion in a chapter called The Legend of the Jews. The rabbis grilled my father with one question after another on every point of Judaism. For about an hour, my father stood before the panel giving answers with accurate details, and when the rabbis were done, they all convened in a separate room to decide the matter. When all was said and done, my brothers and sisters and I were allowed to start Hebrew school in the fall of 1965. Now, here's an anecdotal footnote to the story of the Jewish panel of rabbis. Rumors has it that there were at least 3 rabbis who wanted to hold out for nothing less than full conversion. To which Rabbi Simon replied, "Don't you realize that the bulk of the questions we asked are the same 72 questions we ask all converts?" "Well," Rabbi Simon said to the 3 non-consenting rabbis, "if he wasn't converted before, he is now." And supposedly that's how the matter was resolved. Everyone concerned was satisfied, and I began my Hebrew school education at Congregation Old Zedek at the school and temple, which were both in an affluent neighborhood of Hyde Park, located on the city's south shore of Lake Michigan. It is a predominantly Jewish community, and incidentally, it's the same Hyde Park of which the Obamas now reside. In contrast to that location, my family lived in a working middle-class neighborhood of Brainerd Park, where my siblings and I attended public school at Fort Dearborn Grade School. Now, on a typical day, my siblings and I were at the school from 9 a.m. to 3:15 p.m. From there, we took public transportation to Hebrew school, which began at 4:30 p.m. and lasted until 6:30 p.m. We attended Hebrew school 5 days a week, Sunday through Thursday. We participated fully in the junior congregation, where the children conducted their own services separate from the adults. And I really did love Hebrew school. I worked really hard on every assignment given me. I excelled in my classes, and in fact, the excellent education we received in Jewish studies led to many positive experiences with my new Jewish friends and classmates, from Hanukkah to Purim to Passover to every week on Shabbat. These experiences formed in myself, as well as my siblings, some well-rounded individuals, which did not go unnoticed by our public school peers. I remember that I would always be given a hard time about the way I talked. They said I didn't sound black. You see, my diction was clear and I had a pretty good vocabulary, and for that I got into a lot of fights. But thankfully, I had 3 brothers, and the 4 of us stuck together. And the word soon got around in the hood, don't let the proper speech fool you. These guys can handle themselves. Anyway, we did well with both public school and Hebrew school, and then there was the summer. Summertime for us meant summer camp. And I went to Camp Ramah, the conservative Jewish summer camp for kids. At Camp Ramah, I had the time of my life. It was an 8-week camp located in rural Wisconsin on a beautiful lake. I couldn't begin to tell you how much fun I had. That summer possessed some of the fondest memories of my life. And as far as I'm concerned, I was having too much fun being Jewish to remember that I was black. In the fall of 1967, I began preparations for my bar mitzvah, which ended up being a media event, an unintended result of me being black and having my bar mitzvah at an all-white Jewish congregation. It spoke volumes against the backdrop of the turbulent 60s. Anti-Semitism was at its peak. The civil rights movement was in full swing. Martin Luther King had already marched on Marquette Park, the neighborhood in Chicago which is headquarters for the American Nazi Party, and the Jewish clergy was right there with him. Then you have my bar mitzvah, a black child at an all-white Jewish congregation in a city trying to combat bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism. It spoke volumes in all 3 local network news channels. Banner headlines in a local paper read, "Negro boy to be bar mitzvah at all-white synagogue." The story was picked up nationally by the AP and the UPI, and at this time, when Jewish synagogues were being bombed for their support of Dr. Martin Luther King and the American Black Civil Rights Movement, it spoke volumes. Because Jews were willing to stand with blacks to help them gain their civil rights. Even right here in Jackson, our beloved Beth Israel was bombed because Rabbi Nussbaum's involvement in the civil rights movement, which makes this Black History Month observance here tonight all the more special because of the sacrifices that have been made for a good cause. That tense Sabbath morning of my bar mitzvah went on as scheduled without incident, thank God. I chanted my Haftorah in Hebrew to perfection, and the threshold into mainstream Judaism had been crossed. I stand before you here today ready to show others the way, because black Jewry is widespread here in the United States and abroad. The most familiar to most of us here are the Falashas in Ethiopia. Then there are the Limbas in South Africa, of whom a documentary was made on PBS explaining their direct genetic link to the tribe of Levi, which shows their relationship to the Kohanim of today. The name of the PBS program on which this documentary aired is called Nova. Lastly, there are the Igbos of Nigeria, who were recently confirmed by the state of Israel and the chief rabbi as being Jewish. This was done on September 16th, 2007. Now, in 1967, the Igbos tried to win a war against Nigeria for their independence as a separate state. This struggle was known as the Biafran War. Soon after Israel's own victory in its own six-day war with Egypt, the Israeli government began aiding the Igbos with tanks, small arms, and other weapons until the Nigerian government protested to their former colonial rulers, Great Britain, who in turn interceded on behalf of the Nigerians, forcing an end to Israeli involvement. This, of course, turned the tide against the Igbos, but today, many have immigrated back to Israel under the law of return. So you can easily see that in Israel, there really is no disputing that there are black Jews. So the question remains, why do white Jews who have all the authority and control bother to airlift 200,000 Ethiopian Jews out of Africa and bring them to Israel? Why did they try to help the Igbos in Nigeria in their Biafran war, or even confirm the Limbas as being Levi? Why? Well, the answer is simple. It can be found in a quote that is rooted in Judaism. It says, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. This is the quote that my father used some 40 plus years ago to open the doors for me and my family to enter into mainstream Judaism. It means all Israel is responsible for one another. There's a midrash related to this quote, and I want to share it with you. Jacob was about to bless his 12 sons in Genesis 49, and he had assembled his 12 sons together in a circle, with him being in the middle. And in the circle, Jacob had 12 sticks loosely arranged horizontally lying on the ground. Then he had 12 sticks that were bound tightly together. Jacob said to his son, I have assembled you all here today that you may receive of me your blessings. But first, I want to teach you all a lesson that you should never forget. As you can see here, I have 12 sticks. Each stick represents each one of you. He walked over to the first stick, picked it up and said, Reuben, this is you. And he snapped it in half. After doing this to each stick representing each son, he walked over to the bundle, picked it up, but he could not break it. He said to his sons, as long as you 12 stick together, you will never be broken. This is the message of Kol Yisrael. We must all stick together. Kol Yisrael should be a rallying cry for all Jews without regard to whether they are Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Mitzrayim, Reform, Reconstructionist, Orthodox, Conservative, or Renewal. Whether they are black or whether they are white, it does not matter. Kol Yisrael means all Israel. And that is the message that I would like to leave you with tonight. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. All Israel is responsible for one another. Thank you all for listening, and Shabbat Shalom.